Hey guys, it's Penn Kessering back again. Now I know I don't talk a lot about motorsports on this channel, at all, but something about them's always kind of fascinated me, even though I wouldn't say I'm a fan of them. But I do enjoy a good race now and again. For instance, during the summer, IndyCar's Music City Grand Prix had a great showing between Colton Herta and Marcus Ericsson that ended when Herta, with the best car in the race up to that point, and desperate to pass Ericsson, who at the time was running out of gas, and on old red tires, stuffed it into the wall. Unfortunate, but the racing was great. And I need not even mention in this video, because I'll probably talk about it at a later date, the return to old Bristol in NASCAR. So yeah, I don't talk a lot about motorsports, but I do kind of keep tabs on it. That's all well and good, but what if we had a series where we took some of the best drivers, put them in a spec car, and took them to some of the most famous tracks? It was called IROC, and we aren't talking about that today. Instead, we're talking about IROC's spiritual successor, the Superstar Racing Experience. The SRX, as it's called in shorthand, was developed by Tony Stewart and Ray Evernham, two of NASCAR's biggest names from the late 90s and early 2000s. Tony Stewart is one of the best drivers in the world and one of the most versatile. He won the IRL Championship in 1997, the NASCAR Cup Series Championship in 2002, 2005, and 2011, and won the last IROC Championship in 2006. Not to mention his slew of USAC championships, Silver Crown titles, etc., etc., etc. Furthermore, Tony Stewart also is an owner in Stewart Haas Racing, the car owner of Kevin Harvick's championship ride. And if that wasn't enough, he also owns the Eldora Speedway in Ohio, a track which NASCAR Truck Series has frequented several times up until 2020. Ray Evernham started working with Alan Kulwicki in 1991, but he and Kulwicki didn't get along. Kulwicki was notorious for wanting to do things his own way. So he went and worked for Hendrick Motorsports and became crew chief of one of the best drivers in NASCAR history, Jeff Gordon. If that wasn't enough, he was also instrumental in the return of Dodge in 2001 and had his own team that included drivers like Casey Kane, Jeremy Mayfield, Elliott Sadler, and of course, Bill Elliott. So both of these men have extensive racing pedigrees. So when news got out about a short track version of IROC with Tony Stewart and Ray Evernham doing the setup, everyone was excited to see just what was going to happen. Unlike IROC, the new Superstar Racing Experience was going to be a short track only series, tapping into the heart of American motorsports, the classic Saturday Night Thunder night racing. The tracks were an interesting mix of asphalt and dirt with varied history and racing style. Slinger is like a short Bristol, and Knoxville rarely races stock cars like the SRX car. The SRX cars themselves were also something new. IROC would race production cars, much like NASCAR would, and some of them became famous for being IROC cars, like the IROC Camaro. However, the SRX cars were completely custom built. It was developed primarily by Ray Evernham and his own team, and the cars would be given to each driver at the track. The cars themselves were built by Fury Race Cars, and each had a 396 V8 in them, similar to the engines run in the NASCAR ARCA Menard series. So, with a car and list of tracks, all that was needed were drivers. The SRX series is kind of unique in this case, combining active drivers like Chase Elliott, Hailie Deegan, and Ernie Francis Jr., much like the IROC, and retired drivers like Tony Stewart, Bobby Labonte, and Willie T. Ribbs, like the old Fastmasters series. The series had all sorts of characters, like Paul Tracy, for instance. It also had legends like Elio Castroneves, four-time Indy 500 winner, and champions like Bill Elliott. It had racing royalty like Marco Andretti, and underdogs like Michael Waltrip. It had big names like Greg Biffle and local legends like Doug Coby. All in all, the series had a lot of promise, and had prime-time airing on CBS, and a big sponsor in Camping World. It also brought an interesting assortment of commentators and pit reporters. In the booth every week was Alan Bestwick, a legend in the booth, and he was joined by a guest color commentator, which included Danica Patrick, James Hinchcliffe, and Dario Franchitti, amongst others. In the pits were Lindsey Czarniak, Brad Daugherty, and a couple others there as well. The series was set up perfectly, but when the green flag waved at Stafford on the first night, everything was theoretical. No one knew if the series had any staying power, how good a show the eclectic assortment of drivers would put on, how the cars would hold up to the beating and banging of short track racing, how big the crowds would be, and if anyone would watch on TV. The first race at Stafford was interesting to say the least. It had some major pluses, like Greg Biffle's gold 69 car taking the first heat, but it also had some pretty big shortcomings. Firstly, the initial structure of two heats in a main was flawed. The starting order of the first heat was determined by random draw, the second heat by inverting the finishing order of the first. The results of the second heat would then determine the starting order for the main. This would be dropped after Stafford, and from Knoxville on, the average finishes of the two heats would determine starting order. For another thing, while Bestwick's commentary was on point as usual, Danica Patrick fell incredibly short. She didn't seem all that informed about the series or its rules, which turns out to be a little bit of a problem when trying to explain a new series rules to someone. Also, she was consistently referencing her own career, which, as we all know, is worth bringing up about as much as it's worth bringing up the Mustang 2. And lastly, and most heinously, I might add, she, a former NASCAR driver, did not know Bill Elliott's nickname was Awesome Bill. Okay, maybe that one isn't such a big deal, but you get my point. But all of that is completely pointless if the racing was bad, and it wasn't. The race was excellent. It wasn't too long, but it was long enough for some great side-by-side action. It also had some strategy in it, as the cars didn't make pit stops during the race, and during the breaks the tires weren't changed. In the end, track champion Doug Coby would get the win at his home track. The next week was in Knoxville, the mecca of World of Outlaws racing. They had changed some things around to make the series smoother and the broadcast more watchable. As mentioned, they also changed the way starting order in the main was determined. And of course, driving the wildcard car was legendary World of Outlaws driver Scott Bloomquist. But in the end, it was Tony Stewart who secured the win. The next race at Eldora, unsurprisingly, went to Stewart as well, with Marco Andretti getting a stage win. Unfortunately, some of the other drivers weren't faring as well. Willie T. Ribbs and Bill Elliott were consistently running at the back, only being saved from being lapped by periodic competition cautions. Michael Waltrip, who stated in an interview that he wanted to prove himself to be a better driver than history thus far remembered, also found himself consistently in the back. Paul Tracy also picked up where he left off, causing crashes and blaming others for them. However, other drivers showed their skills went beyond the series they came from. Ernie Francis Jr. is a Trans Am expert, but was far less skilled on dirt. Elio Castroneves was the same way, but both showed great aptitude at the two dirt tracks. The series moved back to pavement at IRP, seeing Scott Speed and Elio Castroneves win the two heats and Ernie Francis Jr. clinching the main. Paul Tracy, however, was consistently being Paul Tracy and had already caused several on- and off-track incidents. Also, the competition cautions became painfully obvious as an attempt to prevent Willie T. Ribbs and Bill Elliott from falling a lap down. The series then went to Slinger Speedway, the track Alan Kulwicki cut his teeth on that made him such a good short-track racer. The quarter-mile banked oval didn't disappoint, and Marco Andretti won the feature, his first win in a major motorsport since 2011. He also won one of the heats. The track champion Luke Fenhouse stayed in the top 5 all night. The final race was at Nashville Fairgrounds. Tony Stewart had already mathematically clinched the championship, but everyone was talking about the father-son race that was in the making. Chase Elliott was to race the number 94 car, a number his dad had driven some 20 years earlier. Awesome Bill won the first heat, his first top 5 finish in any event. Elio Castroneves won the second heat. Chase Elliott clinched the final race of the year, his father finishing third. The Superstar Racing Experience had a lot of expectations put on it. The spiritual successor to IROC, the short-track greatest hits that many NASCAR fans have been clamoring for, and the chance to see legendary drivers race one more time. Did it live up to all that hype? Well, no. But then again, neither did IROC, a series with such heavy NASCAR bias that it was almost insulting. The racing had its epic moments, but it also had a lot of problems, like competition cautions. The broadcast had shaky moments, and a lot of legendary drivers were either well past their prime, were so dominant that the outcome of the race was assured, or were just picking up right where they left off. However, as a showcase for good old-fashioned Saturday night short-track racing, it was perfect. It was fun, and it was a good quick race to spend a Saturday night watching. Was it a perfect series? No, but then again, nothing really ever is. The Superstar Racing Experience is no exception, but it's definitely worth watching. And that's going to do it for me. So for all you motorsport fans out there, well, there's something. Don't worry, back to more typical programming next video. Whatever I end up deciding next video is going to be. Anyway, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see all you guys in the next video. Bye.